If you want to sign up for future events, you've got the QR code there. So take a snap of it, take a screenshot, and yeah, just keep an eye out for everything that we're sharing on the Charlie HR newsletter. If you've not signed up for that, great opportunity. We promote all of these events on there, so keep an eye out. Some housekeeping. If you feel like you can turn your camera on, that's amazing. Always nice to see the people that we're speaking with, even if you're cramming down a sandwich or drinking or slurping a soup from a bowl because it's lunchtime. And any questions, please use the comments and the chat functionality in the bottom right hand corner. And if there are things that occur to you while we're speaking, while Luke and I are going through stuff, please do share. And we'll make sure to kind of come to them and answer them. And if we can't get to everything, we'll make sure to circle around. And so if you've got a really specific question, chuck it on there. And if we don't come to it in the right time, welcome, Sophie. We'll get to it afterwards. So just wanted to sort of talk about who's in the room, because I think it's really, really important. So here at Charlie, we are absolutely focused on micro small businesses. They are the beating heart of what I think drives this economy, and so that's why we focus on that part of the market. And I know the team at Ascendant are also very focused on that kind of micro SME part of the market. So who's in the room today? 86% of you are Charlie customers. That's amazing. Very grateful for that. Please do have an open dialogue with us. That's really, really important to me. It's really, really important to the team. My email address is ben@charliehr.com. So if you've ever got feedback on the product or things that we're doing that you'd like us to improve or ideas, email me day or night. And I'm happy to chat with a customer always. The average company size in the room is 26. So right in that kind of sweet spot that we're talking about. 9% of you are in people and HR roles. 23% are in operational roles. 28% are in founder and leadership roles, and 35% in finance roles. And I think that just talks to the point of, in small business, we all wear many hats, right? And so finance is not something that is always a completely dedicated department. It's something that we all kind of come into contact with. And so excited to chat to Luke about what it means to build a smart finance function, especially in this day and age of great tooling, great software, great systems, and obviously most recently all of the adaptations and development that we're seeing with AI. So we get here finally. Our guest today is Luke Streeter, CEO of Ascendant. Luke, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, a bit about you, try and make it personal, but also tell us a little bit about who Ascendant are and kind of how you approach things in what you do.
Yeah, awesome. Hi, everyone. Great to be invited on here as well. And just to echo what Ben said, the reason why I do these sort of talks are because as I sort of started my own business, it's lonely, and how you get support, advice from your networks and the community, it's fantastic to join things like this. So excited to be able to contribute to it. But I'm Luke Street. I'm the CEO of Finance as a Service at Ascendant. My background, a little bit of kind of why I'm speaking today. So I started a business called Flinder about 8 years ago. In October 24, I exited that to Ascendant. And as part of that, I've become the CEO of Finance as a Service. We run and support businesses with their finance functions. So running end-to-end finance functions from transactional bookkeeping, payroll, all the way through to board advisory. So helping clients, whether that's going for fundraisers, in board meetings, etc. So through fractional CFO support that we can provide, and sort of everything kind of in between that. And also working with some fantastic tech SaaS and e-commerce businesses are two niches that we focus on. It gives us really great insight to sort of like the good, the bad, and to be honest, the really ugly in some instances of what we see in finance. And we help our clients transform their finance functions. And hopefully, therefore, we've got a very good breadth of experience of the type of what is good, what is best practice, what technology is working, etc. in the space. So yeah, hopefully I can sort of share some personal journey in terms of how we've grown our finance functions and how we support growing finance functions, and of course from the other side how we can run finance functions for clients as well.
Yeah, stunning. Super interesting and exciting because of that personal journey that Luke has of actually being a founder, and then also like supporting founders and supporting businesses with their own experience. So a bit about the kind of the way that we do these. We want them to be really informal. We want them to be like a small, tight-knit group for the conversation. So we treat them very much as a fireside chat. So if you've got questions, again, please do chuck them in the chat, and we'll come to them. So we're going to touch on a few kind of key areas. So how do you align finance with your strategy? Thinking about all the data that flows around finance, and what are the right foundations to prep if you are kind of scaling or growing. We've certainly had some challenges with that, and then something that often goes wrong, which is reporting. So just kind of set the scene at Charlie. We've had all different different experiences with how we've looked at our finance function. So there have been times where it's been completely outsourced, and I'm really proud to say that we are an Ascendant customer. I trust them hugely. Welcome, Jordan. And we've also had moments where we've had people in the business, people working in the company, who are then also supported by some kind of external resource. And I know Ascendant do kind of a mix of the two there. And we've definitely got a lot of stuff wrong, right? Numbers in not the right shape, not enough resourcing, reporting in ways that are kind of incorrect or incomplete. We haven't got the right data in the right space. And for me, as the CEO and as founder, the impact that's had at various different points of our journey is it's been hard for me to make the right decisions. That's kind of always what I think about when I think about finance is I want to make good decisions. I want to make sensible decisions. And so that can be anything from, making redundancies, which unfortunately there have been various points of our journey where we've had to do that. We've had to shrink the team. And so having really good financial information, kind of accurate information has guided that. And then also on a more positive note, where we're investing, how we're investing, are we investing in the right places? So where I thought I'd start, Luke, just a kind of a question for you is, when you're approaching and starting to work with these small businesses, what are some of the red flags that you see when your team come into a company and they're starting to work with the team on the ground? What are some of those initial red flags that you see in terms of, okay, maybe things are not quite set up in the way that they should be? Maybe this is orientated, not set up for success, not set up for scale.
Yeah, good question. I'd say typically like chaos isn't born overnight, so it typically comes back to the initial foundations of how things have been set up. We quite often see businesses might not even know what their cash runway is, something so fundamental like that, typically in sort of SME growing businesses. Or I quite often say to someone, what's that, if you're on a desert island, what's that one bit of information you'd need to know about the success of your business? And they tell me, and I was like, okay, cool, so tell me about that. And they wouldn't know. And so if that bit of information is so fundamental, so it can just be some very basic sort of KPIs. It could be like, what's your revenue growth? It could be what's your lifetime value of your customers. So there's some sort of quite simple metrics that can be very fundamental to give you a picture of what's going on in your business, and they just don't have that. And it's typically come from where things have got a little bit out of control. Perhaps it's been sort of the founder that knows the business very well but doesn't understand finance, and they've been trying to do it themselves. And therefore it gets a little bit out of control. You therefore don't have management information, or it gets a surprise at the end of the year that you've made a loss, and you shouldn't be waiting 12 months to find out that you've got a problem in your business. So yeah, it's being reactive. It's like things becoming a surprise to you, and typically just comes down to those foundations, whether it's poor data governance, whether you don't have sort of the right control in place around the business. Yeah, we see lots of sort of ugly things when we come across, but it's typically just the data chaos is one of the things I'd normally say.
Nice. Okay, so chaotic data, not sure what the right numbers are, or we've got the right data feeding those numbers. Everyone's sitting here thinking, okay, does that apply to our finance function? Have we got things set up in the right way? What are the principles? So what are some of the principles that you think about, yourself, but also as Ascendant as a business, that might be a good mirror for all of us to kind of hold up in front of ourselves and go, do these principles apply to our finance function within our businesses? How would you set out the stool there?
Yeah. So there's three areas I will talk about here actually. So you've got efficiency, control, and insight in a finance function, and those three are actually competing demands. So if they're in a triangle, if you're overly controlled as a business, you're not going to be very efficient, or as a finance function. If you're super efficient, you might have gaps in your control, and there could be some weaknesses, and they sort of offset with insight as well. So a business that, if you spend all of your time focusing on insight, then you might have a lack of control in the business. And the three are competing demands, and they build up. So actually, I would always say focusing first on the foundations, being around the sort of the control element of the finance function. Because once you've got the right data and you've got confidence in the data, you can then think about how do you improve your processes to make it more efficient. There's no point in improving a broken process or a broken finance function. So how do you get those initial data, the foundation, and get that control element right? And then once you've become more efficient, you can then really focus on insight. There's no point putting together a forecast that's based on the wrong cash position, because you're just going to be forecasting incorrectly, oversimplifying it. But actually, you need to know what the right position is today to be able to forecast going forward. So yeah, that would be my sort of guiding principle. But of course, off the back of that as well, you've got people, processes, technology, and data. So are you using the right technology to help improve your control and efficiency, for example, or technology for visualizations that will help improve your insight? There's some great tools that you can just plug in. Is in your data side of things, I'd be saying around, is your data structured in the right way that allows you to quickly get insight into it? Have you got the right people that know the technology that you're using? Do they know the basics around finance control? And then around processes, process can be kind of improved and implemented. So yeah, I'd say like the four bits you can impact, or you can kind of change and improve, would be your people, processes, technology, and your data. And then that's the three competing demands of a finance function of efficiency, control, and insight. And the bit that then encompasses all of those 7 points, 7 areas, would be aligning to your strategy as well. So what do you want from your finance function? And so using you as an example, Ben, you as a CEO, what do you want your finance function to deliver? And that needs to be aligned. There's quite often a big disconnect between what a CEO of the business wants, or needs to run the business, make decisions, and what the finance team are producing. So let's get the finance team talking in the language that the business understands as well. So there's a bit around that education piece, like how is finance represented at board level? So how do we bring kind of finance and business strategy to be one ultimately?
Yeah, get that and hear that. I think one of the complaints and one of the challenges that we hear from our audience, like so much, Ryan, is resounding, is what it means to run a small business is there is a lot to do, right? I'm always thinking about survival to some degree. I'm always thinking about how do we survive? How do we thrive? It is very difficult out there. The last 4 or 5 years have been just one challenging thing after another. We had COVID, we've had hyperinflation, we've had national insurance rises. So there's been a lot to contend with, right? It's been really, really difficult to be a micro SME out there in the market. And so when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, great, amazing. But I'm low on resources. Like I probably haven't got as much money in the bank as I'd like, truthfully. And I'm low on time, right? And that's when you see that slide where it's like, who's in the room? We've got ops, we've got finance, we've got leaders. It's like, we're working with what we have. So where do I start, Luke? Like, what's my starting point? What's the thing that, like, if things are on a little bit shaky footing, and I'm not sure that our finance setup is kind of as it should be, what's what's the thing that I should prioritize? Because I can't go after everything because I haven't got the time or the resources. So what's the thing I definitely should go after?
Yeah. Um, it will vary business to business different time. I'll give you an example of that in a minute, but ultimately cash. So like if you're focusing literally on one area, it's your cash runway. And I kind of expand on that in a bit as well. But I'd say it's really kind of the cash, the control, the clarity. So you need to know what's happening today so you can make the sensible and right decisions. So you kind of talked in the intro about like redundancies decisions. You need to know whether you're making money as a business today, whether you're overspending. So don't get caught up on actually what's the business going to look like in 12 or 24 months time, because you might not have a business in 12 or 24 months time if you don't know what's happening today. So it's getting that sort of clarity. So I used the word chaos before. So how do you kind of remove the chaos? How do you get like a clear and clarity of what's currently happening? And just some very simple like monthly management accounts can achieve that. So do you have the cadence of weekly or monthly bank reconciliations? Are you aware of what's on your balance sheet? Because then actually, if you're comfortable with the position and things are very kind of clear, you can then make decisions, and then you can then invest in the right areas. And once you've got clarity that you do have enough cash in the bank to get through the next sort of month or two, and you know what your cash runway is looking like, you can then invest a little bit more in the insight. Perhaps there needs to be some more complicated forecasting or scenario analysis that finance can help with. But those things are nice to have once you've got that foundation right. So yeah, and what is your one or two key KPIs as well? It won't be difficult for any business to go actually, like if it's a SaaS subscription business, you're probably going to be looking at what your sort of retention or churn sort of rates are. That could be kind of key metric, and focused on one or two really key metrics in the business. I've seen too many times there's packs where in Excel there's 50 lines of metrics. It's like, great, what do you do with these? They're just in the pack, we never look at them. So don't spend time producing information that you're not going to look at as well, because as you say, time is so sort of tight. And then the last point really on this, I'd say, is what are those low value, low items that it's just better that you're not doing. Too often people are perhaps doing their own bookkeeping or their own payroll, for example. We make no margin on delivering payroll, so this is not a plug for delivering to do payroll, but that's an easy thing to outsource to someone to do. The same with bookkeeping, like we use offshore cheap resource to do kind of bookkeeping, and too often we find that like CEOs, founders of businesses are in there doing the bookkeeping week to week. They could be out winning that next contract or kind of growing the business. So what are those sort of like really easy low value tasks that would be best that someone else does them if you don't have someone in finance in house that can do that for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really, really great advice, and I always have this thought in my head always, which is that you cannot thrive unless you survive, and
Yeah.
so making sure that the way that you're stacking kind of what you're focused on in the business, I guess optimizes for that. And Benjamin, thanks for letting us know that kind of it's one of the best things that you ever did. I'd be interested to know, and maybe you can follow up in the comments, were there any particular tools or kind of did you use any technology, or was it pretty was it pretty basic stuff that kind of got that system going for you? But yeah, totally agree. You've got to understand your cash position, and you've got to make sure that you know that you can survive for this next period of time. And then that other point, Luke, I think is, and actually that point actually just applies to all parts of the business, which is your time going on the stuff that it should go on?
Yeah.
And I think, yes, sometimes we haven't got the resources to hire the people we want to hire, but also sometimes we're kind of holding on to stuff that we've always done because that's just what it is to be a founder sometimes. And actually getting that off your plate, and if there is a way to like use a tool or bring in some external resource to support you and help you, I think is really, really such a great suggestion.
Yeah, so it's getting visibility and rhythm. It's like having that visibility, having the rhythm. The bits I talk around like efficiency and insight, they just naturally come off the back of that. So yeah, it's getting the core fundamentals right first, for sure.
How when is the right time to add finance resource to your business? So, like I said, we've been through multiple different journeys of this. At the beginning, it's me running our management accounts not very well, and then it's outsourcing to someone like Ascendant. Um, and then we've had someone part-time in-house for a little bit with an outsource model. So we've had lots of different variations of that. We're looking at what we're going to do over the next 3 years. It might be time that we start thinking about a CFO for the kind of things that we want to go and do. Yeah, how do you make that decision, Luke? Like, when is the right time to bring in either extra resource or extra people? And yeah, to that point of we're trying to thrive. We want to put our resources and allocate them towards the stuff that's most important. And it can sometimes feel like allocating them towards finance or operations is rather than marketing and sales, for example, can feel challenging, right? So, not that I agree with that perspective, but I can understand why that feels challenging. So, how do you support people, and what's the sort of advice that you would give to the group on how they can think through that kind of problem, that kind of situation?
Yeah, and it's like the business itself. Finance needs to scale as the business scales and changes, and there's no magic number on headcount. So because actually, like an e-commerce business versus a tech SaaS business, be kind of very different in terms of like the scalability with number of people. In e-commerce businesses, demand planning, stock management, and the linkage into finance there becomes very important quite early on. Versus a SaaS business, you don't necessarily have that demand. So it can really vary if kind of pushed on it. I would typically say around that sort of 30, 40 people is quite often when I see that the businesses will start to struggle. But that normally becomes a hybrid role as well. So in operations roles, quite often like a head of operations or a head of ops, a head of ops or equivalent ops manager might have a hybrid finance and ops responsibilities, but that's typically then supporting whether it's an outsourced function, whether it's a fractional person, or doing some of that themselves. The areas I see the gaps usually appear first, probably around like that FP&A, so financial planning and analysis areas where forecasting, where business partnering with other departments. So using that e-commerce example, it becomes important where actually what is happening from demand planning. So there's no point someone going, right, we need all this inventory in 6 months' time. This is where it's going to land, and they're not connected with finance or speaking with the marketing team in a SaaS business around what is the return on ad spend. So it's typically around that strategic partnering elements in the business we find is the first full-time hire. And another bit I'd kind of say is that I've had people jump too quickly to, great, we're growing, we're doing really well, we need a full-time CFO, or we need a CFO in the business. CFOs will typically find they become too hands-on, and they're spending a lot of their time getting management information ready. They're doing some of these foundational stuff we're talking about rather than adding the value and an insight. That's a very expensive way of getting your management accounts done well, like an experienced CFO kind of stepping down. So you probably don't need a CFO as much as you think you initially do. It's probably that you haven't got the layer below the CFO or your overall finance function operating right. But yeah, to come back to the initial question, once you're kind of getting above that 25, 30, then perhaps that's when you might start needing someone. But there's good fractional options that you can get people 1-2 days a week. You can outsource it to Ascendant. Yeah, you can have contractors. There's other ways of doing it, and you don't need to go full hog with people in finance. And hence why I quite often see it being a bit of a split finance and operations type role.
Yeah, and so just for context, the reason why we've always had a mix of kind of outsourced and now a bit of in-house as well, is because I'm not a finance person. That's not my background. I've been in my role now for kind of 17, 18 years. So yes, I can probably take a view now on how I would hire someone into that team. But in the early days, I didn't have that. I didn't really have that ability to do that. And so I'd much rather put that responsibility on an outsourced partner to say, look, we need a bookkeeper, or like we need someone to help us produce our management accounts, whatever that is. They know what good looks like. They know who to hire. That's their responsibility. That's the first thing. So, you know, rather than just going and trying to pick and bet on myself, I'm actually betting on someone else that has a much better understanding of what good looks like. The second thing is flexibility, right? And I think, we think about that a lot at Charlie, because we know that to be a small business is you have, great moments and tough moments, right? And so we've always tried to bake that into the way that we do business, right? We don't do long-term contracts, all of these sorts of things, which means that our customers have a whole bunch of flexibility, right? We appreciate that because we've been there ourselves. And I think that's the other component, is when you're outsourcing, again, you have a bit more flexibility to like increase that resource or decrease that resource. Which is a little bit different to when you hire someone into your business. Like when you hire that person, that is a person that it's a person, you've got relationships with that person, you've got a connection with them, they make friends and relationships in the business, and actually if you realize you need something else or they're not quite right, there's just a whole bunch of overhead that comes with that. And I think that can definitely be challenging, and a hard thing to deal with. And so again, those are the two reasons why we've always felt like having that outsourced resource makes us much better at doing what we're trying to do.
Yeah, in the right people in the right roles. I've seen someone commented on the thread that they outsource HR. It's like finance is a professionalism, same as HR advisory, same as marketing. So it is leaning on those right professionals to the right level. And of course, there's always economies of scale to bring it in house, but also partnering with someone that's open to that as well. Like we'd work with we've got some clients, they've got 5 people in finance in house, and we have our role, they have their role. So it is finding that right partner that will scale with you and will adapt their model to what suits you as your needs change as well. It's not just a one size fits all type approach is important.
Yeah. And just to give everyone context, we will be finished like nicely before 1 o'clock. So if people have got kind of new meetings kicking off at 1 o'clock, I'll make sure there's at least 10 minutes there to go to the toilet, grab a coffee, get yourself reset, all that kind of thing, because I understand kind of, I understand it, I get it, I understand working life. And Benjamin, there's actually a question for you in the comments from Hannah. So and you've answered it. What a legend. Love to see that people just supporting each other and answering each other's questions. That's the beauty, I guess, of this community, and also like why we like to work with businesses like all of you, because it's just way more endurable, way more exciting. There's no part of me that wants to go and build relationships with big banks or big conglomerates. Luke, as part of that, there's obviously something that a bunch of companies might be going through, which is like investment. And either that's raising money from kind of institutions like funds, or it's angels and family and friends and all that kind of thing. Is there particular advice that you give on how to set yourself up for success if you feel like you might need to raise a little bit of money, or you are going to go on that journey? Are there things that you should be putting in place before you get to that point? Or afterwards, right? Like, what are some of the processes and steps and foundations that are kind of really crucial to that part of the journey?
Yeah, good question. So on this, it's kind of a business that's almost always DD ready, like due diligence ready, will always be a better run business. So if that's your ultimate end goal, I'd say always have that in mind. So always follow like good practice, like make sure your data is clean and well reconciled. So when you then come to ask questions in due diligence, nothing's going to be a surprise. It's already in the right place. So even like linking it back to sort of your world in HR, Ben, it's like, have you got contracts like for your employees? Are they saved down? So similarly, if you've got supply contracts, just get them saved in a simple folder structure. in your SharePoint, your Dropbox, your Google Drive, whatever you use, rather than fishing around on email for these sort of things. So that sort of quite basic data room type approach, like, yeah, if you go for exit or an investment, you're going to have to produce a data room. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of questions on a checklist you have to go through. Actually, if you've got sort of good basic system set up from day one just to run your business in a better way, you're going to be much more investor ready, much more DD ready. So just in terms of like some sort of clean data, monthly management accounts, have you kind of gone through that cadence of monthly or quarterly having a set of management accounts, file them the way it's good that you've reconciled your data and you made some decisions off the back of it. When it comes to actually then, right, we are now going for an investment raise, or we are going kind of for an exit, of course that will then sort of crank up, and that's where you probably then need to get a little bit more robust around like, what is your business plan, what is your sort of 3 to 5 years. You're going to get scrutiny behind sort of those numbers, and how have you calculated your 50% year-on-year growth for the next kind of 3 years in revenue. How does that kind of build up? And that will typically build up from the key metrics that we've talked about kind of earlier on. So if you understand the key metrics for your business and how your business is run, if that's number of website visits, conversion rates, and then average order values, for example, that will then scale up to what your revenue number. So again, I think it probably comes back to what are those sort of key metrics and fundamentals earlier on, which will then help you sort of be ready to build a robust forecast.
Yeah, and on that, I just wanted to talk on the fact of, or ask the question, what happens if you are a founder or you're someone running a business or a team where, maybe you are not the most numerically natural person, and I hold my hands up and say that has definitely been me at various points. I think I'm much better today than I was 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and back then, I probably did wash my hands a little bit of the numbers, and I just said, look, I don't really understand this stuff in a lot of detail. I'm not sure what the difference of gross profit and net profit is, or why EBITDA is called EBITDA, but they're things in a spreadsheet, and the person that's given them to me, I guess I trust. And I sort of like washed my hands a little bit of that responsibility, and I really don't think that was very good. I think it meant that actually I didn't have as much understanding and therefore clarity and control of what was happening in the business as I should. So I think that's probably much more of a common scenario than we realize, which is that we might be working with an outsourced finance person or function, and they send us a bunch of information and we look at it and go, looks like it makes sense. And Luke is telling me that it's all correct, but I don't really understand it all. But I'm just going to say, yep, sounds good. And then until something really, really bad happens, and then you find yourself in a situation where, like, well, actually, I am ultimately responsible for this stuff because these are people that I've employed or partnered with to help make it happen. And so I wish, if I went back, in my career, I would have definitely invested more time earlier on in making sure that I became more literate and more numerate in terms of understanding just some of the basics of how all this stuff flows together. Have you got any advice in that scenario? If we went back 8 years and you were speaking to 28-year-old Ben, what would be the advice that you would give me to improve that part of kind of my ability to do my job?
Yeah, and it's asking that sort of, so what, like you said, get a set of management accounts. It's like, cool, so what does it mean to me? So probably expect more from your accounting partners. So actually, if you've got an accountant and they just send you a set of management accounts, it's probably asking them that question, like, well, explain it to me. I know, for example, I love talking about businesses and supporting sort of founders. So always having that sort of conversation of, so what does this actually mean, and bring it to life and help explain what some of these sort of finance terms mean. So respect that a lot of people are being underserviced if they're paying sort of outsourced providers to do that for them. The other bit is kind of the communities and being curious. I'm part of operations sort of community as well. And I do it in other areas. I ask loads of questions. Like if I don't know, if I get HR challenges, if I get like sort of people decisions, I reach out to my network and people I know. So it's that sort of staying curious and don't be afraid to ask. Like as you just said, lots of people would have been in your position sort of previously. So asking those sort of questions that might feel silly to yourself, but they're not. So just be open, and if you don't understand what these things mean, just ask. There's loads of people out there that would do support, give lots of free time, so be part of communities is a massive part, I'd say, as well. And I guess the rise of AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, they're all our friends now as well. So yeah, as long as it's you make sure it's encrypted and secure, but dump your manager if you're not getting that sort of value add from someone. Dump your management accounts into Copilot and ask it if you're my CFO, what would you put out from this as well? I don't want to do myself and my team out of a job, but actually it just gets those some trigger questions for you, gets you thinking maybe differently about your management accounts if you're not sort of currently getting that from a finance professional as well.
So what you're saying is that if you are partnering with an outsourced provider or an outsourced accountant or something like that, education and helping you understand what you're looking at should be part of kind of, if they're doing it well, should be part of their should be part of how they approach things.
Yeah, we see ourselves, we're an alternative to an in-house finance team. We're not an accountant, and that's sometimes kind of a bit of a barrier or a challenge that sometimes people do just see as an accountant. So why would I ask my accountant about advice on my business? The conversations that like CFOs, FCs, FDs have with clients quite often very quickly diverge away from finance. It's about understanding what's happening in all the different parts of the business. They all tend to lead back to finance. So that finance should be that business advisor. It should be kind of a hub of the business and connected to the business, not this in the old school days, like sat in the corner of an office that the finance team don't speak to anyone else, and they just report numbers. And run payroll. Hopefully people don't see finance like that anymore. So how can you partner with finance? How can it be part of the business, part of the decision making, the leadership team, as opposed to a control function that just give you data or bad news that you're spending too much money.
Yeah. I joke with my wife that the reason I kind of ignored it for so long was because prep school or primary school trauma of being just incredibly bad at maths and being made to feel just super stupid by some of those early years teachers, that I wasn't very good at it. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to engage with this because I don't want to like bring up any of that trauma or being made to feel like stupid or silly. And I guess we're very lucky now that we have like an in-house FD that kind of works part-time for us, fractional, as Luke said. There's so many great fractional people out there. We're really up in the age of great fractional support. And Sophie's done a great job of like actually helping to educate me a little bit over the last couple of years. It's been really, really helpful. Constant time. Ben's got a question, so that's really helpful. While we answer that, if there are any other questions, do pop them in there. Anything about our experiences, any questions for Luke, any questions for the group, it's all good. So Benjamin's question is, we're pretty simple with Xero and Excel for finance, along with some pretty charts in HubSpot. What other tech could or should we add to give us additional insights? Luke, I don't know. I don't know how you think about that.
Yeah, there's a few options, and there's always a bit of a debate. What's the best one? But it's quite often like usability, like personal choice. So, for this, if you're looking for some sort of charts and management reporting, the likes of Sift, Fathom, Futurely, that they all do kind of fairly similar in different spaces. Some of them are a little bit better for forecasting. So I think Futurely is a little bit easier than Sift from a reporting perspective, but Sift is very good if you've got multiple entities or multiple tracking, if you're using Xero, multiple tracking categories, for example. So these tools kind of have their nuances depending on which, but like Fathom's super easy to use from reporting. You get some really good looking reports out of it, but it's a little bit simpler from tracking and drill down and stuff like that. So they're the three that come up. SIF, Fathom, and Future are the three that come up most common. So they're the ones I'd probably start with looking at. And just sort of going back up to Ben's sort of point before around like cash flow. So cash flow forecasting, we tend to build cash flow forecasts in Excel because all of the tools have limitations. But again, it depends on the focus. So if you're looking at like week to week, so if you're looking at like 13 weeks, let's say, so 3 months, something like float is really good because that will connect to your zero. You can forecast on an invoice basis, etc. So if you're looking at week to week cash flow management, something like float is really good. If you're looking a little bit further out, then that's where you're like, if you're looking at sort of 12, 24 months, then the likes of the Fathoms, the Futurely, the SIFs are a little bit better for that.
Yeah, big fan of float as well. Colin, long-time Charlie customer, Edinburgh-based business. Yeah, great business. Guys, I said I would be really strict on time and make sure that you've all got time. So I want to kind of just start to wrap up. Ripley, thanks very much for your kind comments. I'm really glad it's been helpful and useful. And really, we're just trying to unpack some of these challenges that we all kind of all face, right? Like, I don't think anyone starts or works in a small business or runs a small business because they want an easy life. I think they do it because they're passionate about what they're solving for, and they're passionate about, their customers, and they're passionate about trying to change something or make something happen. And it's so important that we do that, right? Because all of the challenging and difficult problems of the day will eventually be solved by something that starts as a small business. So I will never stop banging that drum. But we're going to continue to run these, so please do keep an eye out for more. The team at Ascendant, and actually Luke in particular, has really become a bit of a confidant for me and for us as a business. And they are great people. They're very honest people. They're very passionate about micro small businesses, and they do really incredible work. And so if anyone is thinking about how they set their finance function up, have they got the right support, have they got the right people in the room, do they need more resource, I just really recommend like having a conversation with Ascendant that will give you like a straight down the line view, like Luke, you just seen from Luke over the last kind of 45 minutes, not there to sell, not there to sell, and just very humble, very good, very, very honest people that know what they're doing. So that link, that kind of QR code that you can see, take a screenshot of it. That will just book some time in one of their team's diaries, and you can have a conversation about what you're currently doing and what's working. And that's just, consultative support, no strings. And so just go and speak to the experts. Keep an eye out for more of these events. And Luke's email and my email are both in the chat somewhere. So yeah, please do reach out. Please do come and talk. And we will do a follow-up with the recording and a bunch of the resources that we talked about. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed your lunchtime, and I hope you have a great rest of the day and a brilliant end of the week. Goodbye. Thank you.
Cheers, bye.